Hello and welcome to Some Boy Online. Now we are in the middle of London, which is a bit of a change of scenery. So I'm here for the London Winter Comic Con 2022 with the hopes of meeting Matt Smith and David Tennant out in the middle of nowhere. London's a strange place. Somewhere between pretty glorious and big to look at and really kind of crappy at the same time. So yeah, let's get going. So to kind of culminate this whole amazing experience of London Winter Comic Con 2022, I thought I'd do a bit of retrospective from the studio in addition to the footage that I shot out there. On Friday the 18th, me and a mate travelled all the way down to London. I tried my best to present some of the video in London, which I think is pretty cool, and I think it turned out alright. That's basically... So the purpose of this entire trip was to meet my Doctor, Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor, and David Tennant, the 10th Doctor, and the 14th Doctor, may I remind you, because he's just returned. So yeah, I've always wanted to go to one of these. It seems like the stars aligned, and I was like, yeah, I really have to go to this. In addition to that, Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy were also there, but that's more of a generalised thing. They tend to go to cons. But even so, I thought an opportunity to see 4 Doctors was pretty cool. When we were at the hotel beforehand, I was trying to get some sleep the night before. Children in Need was on, and Millie Gibson was announced as the new companion to the 15th Doctor, Shutigawa. And this is so bizarre, but Millie Gibson was originally in Coronation Street, which is a British soap. So that's always sort of on the TV. I was like, she's really good. Almost too good for Coronation Street. And I kid you not, this was years ago, and I thought to myself, she would make an excellent Doctor Who companion. So this has been the one time that I've been, I think, really excited about a casting without them having previously been in Doctor Who. You know, to a lot of people that don't know who she is, and I'm like, that's the what I said this, but seeing the two of them together, and especially the mainstream reveal, how it was all done, I'm really getting good vibes from it now. Ever since RTD returned, we've gotten more and more stuff, and then on Doctor Who Day the other day, we had this massive drops of information about the 60th and beyond, and I'm excited for both. Disney is now involved, Doctor Who's got this massive budget, and yet they've cast someone from Coronation Street, so it remains incredibly British, and I love that. So on the Saturday, they had set times for the photo ops, which were Colin Baker and Matt Smith. Obviously the main Comic Con hall is just enormous, and it was absolutely crowded of people in these really cool cosplays and stuff from anywhere and everywhere in pop culture. So the Saturday was pretty stressful, to be honest. I mean, it's really cool in retrospect, but actually being there and not knowing whether you're going to be able to get these photos and stuff is concerning. So the first thing that happened was Matt Smith had this big kind of slot for photos like this, and Colin Baker also had a slot at the same time. I kind of had to go to Colin's, but meanwhile, Matt Smith is like the main reason I'm there. On top of that, Colin was kind of late coming into the photo shoot. People were looking at the watches and stuff, and he came in later. So I was like, oh god, it's going to all go horribly wrong, and I'll never meet Matt Smith, and I will just cry. Colin comes along, and he's just like great, because Colin Baker played the 6th Doctor, who is one of the lesser liked Doctors, but then went on to do some really cool things in audio adventures, and Colin says as such himself. But he is renowned in the sort of convention landscape because he goes to so many. He's 79 years of age. I had no idea, and he's still going around and doing all this stuff. So I was thinking in the queue, what do I say to Colin? And what I said was, it was good to see you back, as in the last episode. So I kept it brief, and he seemed really happy with the general fan reaction to that. So I'll put this on screen, but here's the picture of me and Colin Baker. I don't know if this is just me, but Colin Baker kind of sounds like David Attenborough now. So he turns around and goes, "Thank you, it is wonderful to see you too." And then we had the photo, which was great. I just thought it was really nice. We then come out of Colin's shoot, and to my absolute horror, see this like massive queue for Matt Smith. Went to the showmasters, people who kind of organise it, and they were really rather helpful. But in this particular instance, they said, come back on the afternoon slot to see if we can get you in. And I was like, oh god. And it's such a bizarre atmosphere because we walked past the sign-in booth and you could sort of see Matt Smith, like things kept on obscuring his face, so I'd never seen him properly. And then you had all these people queuing and it's like he's just there. And then we had a Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy talk about halfway through the day, which broke things up nicely. And that was free, so you just walked in. We got really good seats. And that was just really fun to watch. It was about 45 minutes, but it felt like 10 minutes really. You've got Colin and Sylvester just talking about, you know, how they got into acting, their time on the show and stuff. They've got incredible chemistry, really bounce off each other, probably from the years of going to Comic Cons.
You're very good.
Oh, thank you.
So you are. I learned everything I know about acting from you.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow, no wonder you haven't worked for a while.
We were allowed to record this because it was an open event, but I didn't catch one of my favourite bits. I mean, there was loads of funny moments, but there's a bit where Colin Baker leans forward and goes, there's loads of people over there, they can't see us, because like they were round the corner. So he leans forward like this and goes, hello, goodbye, and just disappears behind the thing. And it was, had to be there sort of thing. Really funny stuff, but also felt kind of terrible for the people who could not see the stage. Okay, so we are now in the Comic Con. So far, met Colin Baker, the 6th Doctor. We've also seen a talk with Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy. Matt Smith, unsurprisingly, he's actually sort of over there. It's the largest concentration of just crowds and people. These are the autograph queues back there, where he's kind of at the stand. But yeah, Comic Con is very large and crowded, and legs are aching. Meeting Colin was lovely, and the panel with Colin and Sylvester was really fun, just full of other Doctor Who people, and they were just kind of funny and, you know, engaging to watch. So that was really cool, and I got to sit down for 10 seconds. So hopefully we'll get to see Matt Smith soon. So following this, the pressure was slowly ramping up as the second Matt Smith slot was coming up. So I really wasn't taking any chances because of how much of a big deal this was to me and apparently a lot of other people. So basically when you ordered, there was this thing called the Diamond Pass, I think then the Gold Pass, but you're talking about 300 quid, I think the biggest one was. But I just got on the standard photo op, and there was loads of people online saying, well, it's not guaranteed, and that was a terrifying prospect, if I'm honest. And the Showmasters people were quite keen to get people out the way for these diamond people. It was like some sort of class system, really weird. But nonetheless, we lingered around still because I'm not taking any chances. This is Matt Smith. So we're standing next to the sort of entrance thing, and you're hearing, oh, Matt's late, he's running behind schedule. So I'm like, oh great, is he going to have less time for people now? What's going to happen? And then I was standing there, and I kid you not, I can't describe this feeling. Matt Smith, about this far from me, just walked past, out of a door, and then you heard sort of people cheering and stuff. But when I turned, there was no noise, and it was just Matt Smith right there. I was like, and he did this sort of swanky walk through the crowds, which parted. So that was the first time, but we were stood here for a long time. And he actually came out again, and I sort of got this on film, but not very well. Really annoyed at that. So the door opened, and you saw basically Matt Smith's personal guard, who was stood like this. So I quickly whipped my phone out and went to selfie mode, and you see Matt Smith come out the door, hear the crowd sort of cheering, but then he walks like the other direction to where I had the camera. So I was like, damn. And then he gets lost into the crowd. There he is. So long story short, we got into the queue eventually, and there is Matt Smith, just there. Amazing. So we walk up and we're both like, what do we say, sort of thing. And I had this thing in my mind of like, I watched him when I was little, because that's something quite powerful. That back in 2010, I was 9 years old watching Matt Smith as the Doctor. The 11th hour was the one that got me into it. And here I am in 2022, 12 years later, meeting the guy himself. But of course, all these other people who are queuing are probably thinking the same thing. So I went up to him and I carefully brought this Sonic Universal Remote, which is now I think pretty valuable because they're not sort of available. Basically, it's exactly like the prop, lovely and heavy, and it does the flick action. So I thought I'll go up to Matt, give him this, and hopefully he can flick it out And how awesome would that be? So I went up to him and was just quickly like, "Hi Matt, you were my doctor when I was like 9, and I was happy to get some kind of word in." And his response was like, "Wow mate, that's really cool, and do you want me to hold this sort of thing?" I was like, "Yeah, if you just sort of flick it out." So this was turned off at the time, but what actually happened was Matt flicked it for the photo and then held the button. So when I had it afterwards, I was like, "Whoa, this is turned on." And I was like, "Oh, Matt pressed it on the picture. That's insane. This Sonic has been christened by the real Matt Smith." So yeah, he gave us that and then kind of fist bumped us, which was really cool.
Nice, brother. Have a great day, dude.
But I just really loved the vibe of meeting him. It was really just a cool experience. Not cool, there's no words really that describe it for me. I just loved his kind of swagger and all this. He had this amazing aura. And with it being so long since he played the Doctor, it did feel like Matt genuinely was appreciative of all this support years later. So I'll put this on screen, but here is the picture of me and Matt Smith. It was sort of a very wide shot because I've been pointing the screwdriver. So I've went and kind of enlarged it in post a bit, and I think that looks really, really cool. Like, the only difference, I think, is that his hair's a bit longer, which is still very doctory. He just absolutely still embodies the character, and he needs to come back. So the final thing of the Saturday was the Matt Smith talk. Now I was really looking forward to this too, and still sort of in shock from seeing Matt Smith like 3 times thus far. So we're headed straight to the stage where it was going to be, but because Matt was previously running late, this had a knock-on effect and he was sort of late for this as well. But it wasn't too bad. We got in and got front row seats, a bit off to the side. Turned out to be rather cool indeed. So on the screens they were playing these trailers. When I say trailers, basically a few of them that sponsored the con. So occasionally you get the Mario movie trailer, which is really cool to see on this big screen. Obviously I've reacted to it before. And what sticks out the most was Willow for Disney+. And you just had this same music and there was like variations of the same trailer and you heard people going, "Ah." But anyway, I didn't mind because I was there and Matt Smith was about to come out. So my mate was like, "Are you going to ask him anything?" And I thought about this and I was like, well, I'll try. I really should try. But it's a lot of pressure and I thought it's never going to happen because huge crowd of people, but I'll try and think of something. Unfortunately for this one, there was a strict no videoing sort of policy. They have these guards at the back. Apparently if they saw you videoing, they'd come and delete it off your phone and shit like that. But I may have sort of voice recorded a bit of it. You know, they didn't mention anything about that, they just said video, so. But anyway, afterwards on Twitter, loads of people had recorded segments of Matt Smith on stage and they went viral and stuff and made news headlines, so that's quite annoying. I did take a few pictures and Matt Smith sort of ran on the stage, big applause. So cool because he's just sat there. And I'll say it again, I just never got over the fact that this guy's been on my bedroom wall and stuff and in all these posters and everything just for years and years. Always just been this idea in my head, may as well have been. And there he is there, just on the stage. And believe it or not, he's a very normal and down-to-earth person, who'd have thought it. So to cut to the chase, they were talking about his backstory, how he got into acting, all this really interesting stuff. I could have sat there all day. It was just so cool. And then they get to the point where they ask questions. I'm trying to put my hand up, you know, hand shoots up every time, and by the time your hand's up, someone's chosen. So I was like, not gonna happen, but I was just in awe of Matt Smith being there. And there was a few people around me that were picked, and you know, this woman was dashing around the microphone. And to my horror/amazement, the showmaster's woman comes up beside the microphone like this. And I'm like, oh my Jesus, holy God, this is Matt Smith there. She's probably not even going for me, she might be going to the other side. So the question finishes, microphone's handed to me. I'd sort of rehearsed something. Otherwise I would have just spluttered and, you know. So I have the microphone, first thing I say is, "Hi Matt." And Matt Smith's just looking directly at me and goes, "Jurassic Park." And I'm like, I don't think I even processed that he said that at the time, but I was talking with my mate later and he was like, "Did it occur to you how you said hi to Matt Smith?" And he just responded, "Jurassic Park," like there was no... The reason was, by the way, I had a Jurassic Park t-shirt on, I mentioned earlier. So glad I chose that now because we've got this iconic clip of Matt Smith saying Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
And I was thinking in my mind of how I could cram as much stuff as possible into this one question without asking multiple questions and stuff like that. So I start with, when I was little back in 2010, you went up against the Paradigm Daleks. And he goes, they were the new ones, weren't they? I'm like, yep, the new ones. And I don't know, I was aware that I'd probably mess up, so I was trying to be like proactive in getting some words in. It was truly a thing of the moment, and after it all happened, brain was frazzled. I had to try and like recollect it all. So yeah, question was about the Paradigm Daleks, which, if you don't know, were this new type of Dalek introduced in Matt Smith's first series, and I absolutely adored them as a child, but nobody else did. Like, the fandom disliked them, and they were quickly sort of shoved off to the side. So in short, I want to ask Matt what he thought of that. And for those of you who don't know, which will be everyone because I haven't announced it yet, I may or may not have one of those props in my garage from the show. It's crazy, and I plan to do a whole thing on it. So I said as such to Matt Smith, sitting here with a microphone. Matt Smith is there. I'm like, yeah, you know those Daleks? And he's like, oh yeah, I quite like them, they were cool and stuff. I've sort of, the BBC flogged them, and I now have one. And his response was, bloody hell, mate. And this went on for like a couple minutes. I was sat here having a conversation with my bloody doctor, Matt Smith, on the stage about a Dalek that I bought, which is crazy in itself because that's just happened. One of the first things he said was, what colour is it? And I'm like, the metallic red. He said, ooh, nice, and there was a bit of a cheer in the crowd.
Which colour did you get?
The metallic red.
Oh, the red one.
The red ones.
Nice.
And again, every few seconds, I'm just recalibrating. This is Matt Smith. So we were just talking about this. I was like, oh yeah, you said the blue one was your favourite, right? Because that was always cited as such.
I think the blue one's my favourite.
And he went, oh yeah, probably because I'm a Blackburn fan. And he talked about football a lot earlier, and that's what he loved really and wanted to do before getting into acting. And the team that he supports, being Blackburn, is like a blue colour. So that's some really cool and weird insight into that piece of information from years ago.
Probably because I'm a Blackburn fan. So I just go, oh yeah, I like the blue one.
So after Matt had asked that, I then went on to basically try and ask the question, which was, what were his thoughts on them and stuff, you know, from behind the scenes. What did it look like? That's the words I said. And he's like, what did it look like? Probably, in retrospect, Jordan, he's thinking, what do the Daleks look like? It looks like a flippin' Dalek. But what I meant was sort of the bigger picture. So I rephrased that and was like, yeah, what was it like with these Daleks being brought in and then quickly shafted off? Because I think they're very iconic with Matt Smith's Doctor and his era. So he went on to say that he was a fan of the Paradigm Daleks, and at the same time he was aware of the backlash. I mean, to him, he was just an actor at the end of the day, but it was really cool to have his thoughts on the whole thing.
I mean, I was aware of the backlash, but I sort of didn't mind because I loved the idea.
His favourite memory of the whole thing was the Jammy Dodger. As he said, I got a biscuit out of it. And the crowd sort of laughed at that.
Because I got a biscuit out of it.
The Jammy Dodger.
The Jammy Dodger. And not every doctor has a sort of cool biscuits. And I saved the day with a Jammy Dodger, so I was like, yeah, whatever, it's cool.
Yeah, obviously it's iconic imagery of the whole Paradigm and Matt Smith with the Jammy Dodger. So cool to just hear him talk about that. And he went on to say that despite the fans not really liking the design, he did get a biscuit out of it. And it's pretty iconic.
Alright, it's a Jammy Dodger, but I was promised tea.
But it was just a sort of casual, and my voice was being projected around the room. I was thinking, you know, you'd be fine, Jordan, you present stuff for YouTube all the time. This will be exactly the same, but it is not. I can edit these videos for a start, and that was just on the spot. But yeah, the conversation wrapped up with them saying,
I'm pleased you bought one. And I kind of liked them too. They were weird and shiny.
they're in terrible, state.
Yeah.
I've stuck to hell, but yeah.
Listen, in 50 years, you'll be laughing.
Oh god. It's so bizarre. I think I did okay. So I was like, thanks very much. And he's like, pleasure mate, pleasure. But yeah, I carried a conversation with Matt Smith for about 2 minutes. And that is something that'll probably stay with me forever. I really, really hope that someone has filmed it. Like, Showmaster should do that and sell it if they want to. So the audio exists. I'm just so grateful, all in all, that happened. Like, there were so many people there. Hundreds of people. And for some reason, I got picked. Matt Smith now knows that I have one of the Dalek props. that he was in Doctor Who with. So this particular sort of segment, the latter half of the Saturday, was probably the coolest overall. But we got back to the hotel absolutely knackered and we're like, well, David Tennant tomorrow. So on the Sunday, David Tennant's photo op was at 10, so we went straight in this long zigzaggy queue. I think at about 9, and then we got there before 10, but there was, just already masses of queues. Same gist again, diamond passes. We're standing there, and once again, David Tennant just walks past. He's, just looking like the Doctor. He was just clean shaven and walks through with the guard. And every time this happened, it was before the general public noticed. So a mysterious door would open and then just a celebrity would come out. So I'm in the queue. This time I've got me Tennant Sonic, which is also the remote, which goes up like this. So I go up to Tennant and I'll be honest, I'm pretty terrified because it's David Tennant. It's bizarre, so I just said to him, I have a feeling you'll make a good 14th Doctor. And he goes, oh, thank you. That's all you can really say in the time given. But I thought it would be a cool thing to say in a sort of jokey way, because obviously he's going to be amazing 14th Doctor, because he already is the Doctor. So I hand David the Sonic and try and put my arm around him type thing, and he just does this really dynamic Day 2, we might have just sort of gotten in and seen David Tennant, and it happened quite quickly, much more quicker than the Matt Smith one. Yesterday we had to get the later slot, but today we're just straight in on the moment, and it was pretty surreal. So I got both Matt and David with the Sonics, which have now been held by them. It's pretty much mission accomplished, though there is the photo op with Sylvester McCoy later today, which I'll be fitting in too. So we'll just in the meantime explore the con a bit more. Woohoo! So here's the photo of me and Tennant, I'll put that on the screen, and as you can see, he came dressed as the backdrop. So I'm standing there hey, David Tennant, and Tennant is very much in character as the 10th Doctor. And what happened with that one is the camera guy was dissatisfied with the level at which he held the Sonic, so he was like, oh, can you move a bit to David Tennant? And I'm standing there in the meantime. I got a small pocket of time with David as well. Then he hands me back the Sonic, get a sort of thank you, and moving on. So this is bizarre as well, because I think David Tennant's era just sort of definitively is the best era of Doctor Who. Matt Smith's era was the one I grew up with, but I know from a writing standpoint, Tennant's later series were the strongest. Probably the most known Doctor Who now, about the same if not more so than Tom Baker. And he's also currently the Doctor, so all this is going round. I'm like, wow. Very quick, but I feel like it's another life accomplishment. I never thought I would meet my two favourite Doctors, It's hard to kind of process it when I was there. It's all this history of Doctor Who, everything he's been through, everything he represents. David Tennant is just there. I mean, he was narrating Children in Need the night before I got back, and he's doing car advertisements on the radio, and I've just met him. Now that was over, that was the two big ones out of the way and done, and I was kind of like, did that actually happen? Yes, it did, and we just had Sylvester McCoy later on in the day. So in the meantime, we're on the floor of the Comic-Con, and this is when I could really sort of sit back. So we had a proper browse around the con. There was some really cool vintage game stuff. There was N64s, GameCube, all that lovely Nintendo stuff, but preserved perfectly, these vintage boxes. There's a copy of Mario 64 just there in this case, and I was like, wow. So getting near to the end of the day when Sylvester's photo session was, we'd walked around for that much, they were really just sort of knackered. So we sat down on the top floor, and to my bewilderment, the guard emerges from the thing, and you could just hear this voice through the crowd going, oh, I don't know, I can't see you, where are you? And Jodie Whittaker is just there. And it was truly bizarre. I didn't end up getting a photo with Jodie because I prioritised the Matt Smith and David Tennant ones that much, they meant a tremendous deal. And despite Jodie Whittaker being really quite lovely in person, by all accounts, you had loads of people saying how they'd met her and stuff. As you may know, I was not really a fan of her era at all. So it was a bizarre situation. I really enjoyed the David Tennant, Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi eras. And then that era was just quite a letdown. So it was a surreal moment. I was like, that's Jodie Whittaker. But for context, by the way, she was talking on the phone to like maybe a manager or something, or one of the staff who were over on the other side of the hall, and she was trying to work out where to go, like a normal person, with the exception of the bodyguard waiting to jump on anyone who laid a finger on her. So we got to last photo session being Sylvester McCoy, went in the queue pretty early and got in pretty fast once again. I'd really kind of gotten a feel for the photo thing by now, and I'd technically met Sylvester before, about 5 years ago at a smaller con, so it was quite laid back really. Upon thinking of what to say, I thought of how kind of exhausted I was from going around this con and thought, like, you do this all the time, you know, it's really quite commendable, I thought. So I thought, I'll mention that's something a bit different. So I said that, we had the photo, and you replied, it's all acting really. And that is exactly what I thought, going to these cons, basically putting on a bit of a performance for the fans, which he is very lively and jumping around and stuff. So I said, you know, you're really good at it. And he said, thank you. You get a bit more time with the classic Doctors, I should say, because there is less of a massive crowd of people waiting to go in, so you get a bit more time. So I stood next to Sylvester. I'll put this on the screen, but there's the photo. Put my arm around him, he's like down here, like he really is quite small. So after that, basically recorded a bit more and went to exit at the corner of the hall where the stairs were, and I kid you not, a door opened and David Tennant walked out again, just in front of us. By this point I was like, why didn't I have my camera out? Because I kept on recording bits of ambience and stuff for the video, and like every time I put it down, like a celebrity would come out. But yeah, it's been really fun to see him and Colin at the talk. Of course, Matt Smith and David Tennant, and it's somewhat of a massive relief to have done that because it would have been so easy to miss out. So that's a bit way off my chest. Between like the Matt Smith talk, I got to ask Matt Smith a question and stuff. I'll probably maybe play that, I don't know. But that actually happened. I got to, after I've met Matt Smith, interact with him. That was probably the highlight overall. I think the last few years I'd kind of fallen out of love with Doctor Who, if that makes sense. I mean, pure and simply, it wasn't as good, and I hadn't felt as much of an affinity for it. I'd still watched the old stuff occasionally, but not even very much, and it was more of this cool, nostalgic memory. But then, with the stuff happening in the show recently, obviously Russell T Davies has returned, which is massive. It's getting a huge marketing push. We've got Tennant back as the Doctor, a Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson coming in the future. I've just met Tennant and Matt Smith, and hopefully, the love of God, somebody asked by the way, and he denied it, but hopefully he is in the 60th, along with Capaldi, who also showed up with Ncuti Gatwa around the same day. There was so much Doctor Who stuff happening, and it has really ignited that sort of love for the show again, I think. So onwards and upwards to the 60th really, but regardless of what goes on with that, whether it's really good or not, I've now physically came face to face with my childhood basically, and I'm always quite sentimental with that kind of thing. I mean, the channel as a whole is me looking back on stuff that I liked when I was little, as I said to Matt Smith, and I think it can be negative to sort of live in the past. But this was a really cool reminder that that is, you know, still there. Seeing Matt Smith and him looking exactly the same, like the guy's barely aged, and Tennant, who's even older. It was just lovely. Off the back of, by some miracle, getting a Dalek, I, within the space of about a week, have now told this to Matt Smith, and that I just can't get over. It's ridiculous to say in a sentence. It was amazing meeting Tennant and Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, but I love that it was my Doctor who I actually got to have a conversation with. Not much, just a couple minutes, but for like 2 minutes I talked to Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor, and it's just pretty special. So that has been the London Winter Comic Con 2022. It was extremely, very much quite cool. We've got to meet Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, David Tennant and Matt Smith. Not bad, you know, on the whole. Really cool and different experience, certainly. Been out in the middle of London, but yeah, just fun overall, you know, good vibes. It was a nice sort of atmosphere, very busy at times, to see people stressing out. I was stressing out, but it is one of those things where it's completely worth it. We left after that. The chaos of London, headed back on the train, and I'd said at the time it feels like the end of Jurassic Park, you know, when the calm music is playing and stuff, and Alan Grant's like lying asleep in the helicopter. And speaking of which, that Jurassic Park t-shirt is now just iconic. So yeah, I got back, been looking at the photos, and then I did a bit of a comparison thing between, there's like a really blurry old photo of me dressed as the 11th Doctor with this wax figure of Matt Smith, and I put it next to the one of me now and actual Matt Smith, and it's just amazing. There's a wonderful poetry to the whole thing. But yeah, that's where I've been pretty much, and thanks so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more Doctor Who content. There should be plenty to follow. But yeah, thanks for watching.